The high organic touch is not just a way to get people into the sales, but I'm constantly asking for feedback from my clients on what I could do to improve. Or if I even notice that something is not working, sometimes I'll just Voxer a client. One of my best clients, like, hey, I'm noticing this is happening. Do you have any feedback for me? Should I do this or this? I really attribute my success for my high referral and renewal rate from listening to my clients.
Hey, my friend, welcome to the Art of Online Business podcast. My name is Rick Mulready, and I'm an online business coach. I'm an ads expert, and most importantly, I'm a dad. And this show is where we help established online course creators and coaches create more profit, more impact with less hustle. All right, let's get into it. What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning in today, as always. Super appreciate you. So my guest today, her name is Elaine Lou Cartas, and she's a business and career coach and as well as a speaker. And she specializes in helping women of color entrepreneurs and industry leaders land their dream career and create business opportunities through relationships, both online and offline. And Elaine is also the founder of Color Your Dreams Movement, which is an initiative to inspire and support women of all colors to create their business dream and life. And Elaine is an expert in what she likes to call high organic touch and no touch times. Now, the no touch times, we can take that a couple different ways. Number one, like we've been in a pandemic for 2 years, right? Almost 2 years. And so we haven't been able to connect with people on a personal level, especially in our businesses, right? But also no touch times, like I look at that. And one thing I think about is we are talking to them about how we can help them in our business, for example, or through an Instagram DM or through your podcast or whatever it might be. That is unfortunately kind of rare in this day and age in the online space. And so Elaine this is a wide ranging conversation here with Elaine. And for the most of the conversation, we're talking about quote unquote higher ticket programs and how to leverage this personal connection with people and going the extra mile to create that connection and how that can help you grow your business, especially your quote higher ticket coaching programs. Okay. And Elaine, her background is in fundraising for nonprofits. And she has taken what she learned in the nonprofit space and raising money and connecting with donors to running her very successful online business. And you're going to hear exactly how to do that here today. So she takes us through kind of her 3-step system, if you will, for how to do this. And like I said, it's a really wide ranging conversation. I think that you're going to get a ton out of. And she shares some specific numbers from her business and so on. So before we dive into it with Elaine, speaking of connection, if you are an established online course creator or you're an online coach and you're looking to take things to the next level in your business, you're looking to scale, but you're not quite sure what to do. You're feeling stuck. You're feeling overwhelmed, maybe burned out, and you're doing all the things in your business. Well, I want to invite you to apply. It's application only for our accelerator coaching program. When I say establish, what I mean by that is you're already doing at least $100K a year from your online business. And what we help you do is to create more profit, right? Because more revenue is great. How much of that's actually going in your pocket? More profit, more impact with less hustle. Okay. So if you are interested in learning more and applying, go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. All right, my friends, without further ado, let's go hang out with Elaine. Elaine, we were just talking before we hit record here, and you're doing a one-on-one coaching session here coming up. So we're recording this like the first week of December, and someone's actually flying in to coach with you. And one thing they were super excited about was the ability to, holy cow, do this in person, be around you, have a coaching session with you, and not have it be over Zoom or anything virtual. And you said that was like, a big selling point because, hey, let's do this in person. We've been in a pandemic for 2 years, and we've really been missing the personal touch, if you will, the ability to get together and communicate. I know that for our accelerator coaching program, we haven't been able to do a live in-person retreat that we normally do. The last one was literally the first weekend that COVID, quote unquote, became official, if you will, in March of 2020. And so it's been almost 2 years, and we're not out of the woods yet. And so I wanted to talk to you. I want to have you on today because this is something that you specialize in having the ability to have higher touch with people in, we'll call them, higher organic touch in these no quote unquote touch times, right? This is something that you're super, super good at. And I know that a lot of our students, a lot of listeners have been talking a lot about this and their desire to connect with people, but it's that much harder when we're not able to do it in person. So I want to dive into all that with you here today. And I'm really excited to welcome you to the show. And as we dive into it, let's have you introduce yourself, who you are, and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, Rick. I was telling Rick I have been listening to his podcast whenever I'm at the gym, working out, washing dishes. So basically, when I could multitask. So my name's Elaine Lou Cartas. I'm a business and career coach for women of all colors and allies. And I help women of color and allies scale their businesses where they're creating a legacy that's just more than themselves, not just based off of what their parents and family members told them what to do. And what I mean by legacy, it's not just creating a business, but also that time off. So if you want a 3-day week, go have a 3-day week or 4-day week, whatever it may be. Or if you just want to do absolutely nothing and just Netflix and hang out, then do that. So I've had my business for almost 4 years, and I'm also the founder of the Color Your Dreams movement. My career prior to being a business coach was I was a former grassroots organizer and nonprofit fundraiser. So my experience prior to being a coach, being a fundraiser, and when I mean fundraiser, I mean Elon Musk being my donor, and I got to meet him in person. So a lot of my methodology for high organic touch came from my past experiences as a fundraiser and grassroots organizer to now. And I always have to remind people behind a product or service is a human being. So I'm excited to delve deeper, Rick.
Yeah. So how do you define having the ability for high organic touch and connection? How do you define that?
High organic touch, it sounds so simple, but it's truly listening and understanding the individual that you're connecting with. Like Rick, we were talking about it. I know you've mentioned it in the podcast before, where when someone applies for your program, you're looking at what they do, making sure that they're a great fit, right? And for me, when I'm connecting with someone who's a lead, I'm also looking at them if they're a great fit prior to even engaging in a phone conversation. Not necessarily because I think I'm too good for them, but just anything, you want to make sure it's a good fit and listening to them.
So is it as simple as kind of just doing your homework?
Yes.
Before a conversation?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of, I remember we've talked before, and when I was a fundraiser, I would do my research, right? So one of our donors, I'm not going to share her name or what she does, but we wanted to get a $100,000 scholarship from her, and we found out that her daughter passed away from cancer in her 30s. And so I remember meeting with her, and we presented this, we'd love to honor your daughter. And she was so excited. Now, you might be thinking on the other side, Elaine, did you just stalk this person? Like, that's very personal. At the same time, it was just all over anyways. In the newspapers, she talks about it. But when you compare that in the online world, it's similar to what we do with ads, right? Mm-hmm. To the granular level of what someone's hobbies are, where they live, their age. And Rick, you've shared this so many times. When you really know your ideal client, you just need to continue just talking about what their needs are, how you could support them over and over again.
So you have quote unquote, higher ticket offers in your online business. And you've used exactly what we're talking about here to grow your business, taking everything that you've learned in the fundraising space, et cetera, and being able to leverage the success that you had in having people, donate to certain causes, what have you, and building those relationships with people for your programs. How do you go about doing that? Well, because you have people, you don't do much cold outreach. Most people coming to you for coaching, and correct me if I'm wrong, most people coming to you for coaching are consuming some form of content that you have or are learning about you prior to them even filling out an application, correct?
Yeah. So I know that Rick's all about tracking numbers, which you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
So 84.29%, yes, I know it to the decimal point, comes
I'm
from
so
referrals or
impressed.
renewals. But something that has changed because I am heavily referral and renewal based
Hmm.
is I listened to what my sales calls were doing. There is special people, like a couple of people who told me, yeah, I just searched you on Instagram. I was like, okay, what keywords did you use? And they said business coach or woman
Hmm.
of color coach. And I started thinking about it as I was planning out a trip to Santa Barbara and San Diego, which I know you're from, like
Hmm.
best hotels in San Diego. I was Googling it and it kind of dawned on me. Wait, if I'm Googling this, people are Googling for me or for a woman of color business coach. And so I actually this past year started investing in Google SEO, which I was sharing with you. So if you consider that cold, but I've had a 512% ROI from that. However, to what you're saying with cold is they are stalking me.
Hmm.
They're going to my media page. Listen, I don't have my own podcast yet,
Hmm.
but they're listening to my podcast interviews. They're reading articles. They're reading my blogs, similar to you, Rick. You do the podcast because I know you love it, but
Yeah,
you also get leads from it as well.
absolutely.
And people are consuming it. And what's great is you don't necessarily have to build so much of the individualized relationship, but by you just showing up, you're gaining so much trust. And that's why your podcast is so great.
So I know that when we talked previously, you were talking about if you were connecting with somebody, say on Instagram, you mentioned Instagram. And again, going back to the success that you had as a fundraiser, how would you do that sort of thing? How would you take those principles and practices and use them within making connections on Instagram, for example? And maybe it's you reaching out, or maybe it's somebody who's DMing you about your programs to learn more.
I don't do it as much because what's great is I have a busy coaching business. But what I
Yeah.
did before was what happened when some people added me on Instagram. I actually took time, and I didn't do it every day, probably once a week for 30 minutes, where I would look at their profile and see who their mutual friends are. Because, like I said,
Mm.
let me look at my numbers right now. 35% of my clients are referrals. So I want to see if they know any of my clients. And if they happen to be friends or mutual friends with my own clients, I will leave a voice memo so they know it's personal, right? Hey, Rick, I see you're friends with India. India is actually a good friend of mine. We met up in Baltimore. I would just love to know more about what you do. So if you notice,
Mm.
didn't even pitch.
Yeah.
I just found what that commonality is.
What about when people are reaching out to you to ask questions? Is it the same sort of approach? Now, again, I want you
Yes.
to repeat that number that you said before, that when I said I was so impressed, that what percentage of your business is repeat people who are just continuing to work with you, they're signing back up, and also referrals?
And it's funny because I know Rick is a numbers guy, and so am I. So I have my spreadsheet in my other monitors. So
So
it's
happy
not
about
it's
that.
not based off memory. I just don't want you guys to think I'm impressive. But it's 48.57% renewals and then 35.71% referrals.
So that's huge, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute to well, I don't want to like tee this up as give you a softball here, but like, what do you attribute that to? Because that's amazing, right? Like, because so many people think like, oh, I'm, putting too many eggs in this one basket of, ooh, I can't control the number of referrals, or I can't really control whether somebody, signs back up with me or not. But I can control lead flow from this external source, like paid ads, for example. What's your thought on that whole thing?
So it goes back what I said earlier in the podcast, it's the listening. So the higher organic touch is not just a way to get people into the sales, but I'm constantly asking for feedback from my clients on what I could do to improve. Or if I even notice that something is not working, and I don't just do it in a group call, but sometimes I'll just Voxer a client. One of my best clients, like, hey, I'm noticing this is happening. Do you have any feedback for me? Should I do this or this? It's like a marriage, right? I mean, Rick, you're married. I'm in a relationship. Asking for that feedback from your partner on how to improve things. And I'm not saying you do everything your clients tell you to fix, but it's what in complete alignment. And so I really attribute my success for my high referral and renewal rate from listening to my clients. It's interesting. Even recently, this past year, I had my growth year of changing my services and exactly who my ideal clients are. And my best clients were telling me, Elaine, I don't think some of these clients deserve to be with you. I'm like, what do you mean? These are the type of clients I see you with. And they gave me the exact words to use. And just like what you and your copywriter mentioned in your past podcast, I use those words and basically use it on my sales page. And whenever I'm on sales calls, I'm in this great place where clients are just coming to me. I'm so happy.
Now, I would think so. I would hope so. Most people, and I used to think this too, most people think that listening to feedback from our customers, like asking them for feedback, is kind of a sign of, and I'm just putting myself in this, like I'm just using my own words because, again, this is something that I used to think in this way, that it would lessen the quote unquote, I'm the expert and they're learning from me. But yet I'm asking them for feedback, like what would they like to see different? Does that make sense?
I think so. So how I frame it is I want to provide a better service for you. One of the pillars that I do, I'll give you an example. One of the things I changed up, so I have an accountability portion in my business, and I did hire an accountability coach to support me, who was great, by the way. What we realized though, she's a lot more better doing my events and retreats as my event and retreats manager. And none of my clients were really messaging her, and it wasn't her. They just ended up messaging me. I'm like, okay, then what was the point of doing that? And so what I do instead now is I actually have such a simple answer. I have a spreadsheet, and I have I have my form of project management, which I use Monday.com, all my clients and where they're at. And then I just simply Voxer them to see where they're at. And then something that I'm building out with my team is they could extract, think of it like doctor's notes. When you go to a doctor now, they're not doing pen to paper. They're typing out your notes when you go see a doctor now. Now we're just figuring out how we could automate it through emails. So that was one thing that we changed my business. I thought it was a person, but it wasn't a person. It was actually a system, and asking for that. So I noticed it. I asked my clients for feedback. Hey, this is what I noticed. Why? It validated it for me to change it. So I'm still the expert knowing that they need the accountability, but how to roll that out as a deliverable, I noticed it, and then it was just validated with my clients.
So wait, you're looking to automate this accountability process and updating process through email. Is that right? Am I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
I'm still in the process of it.
Okay, what's the plan? I'm super. This is a selfish question.
No, I just hired on a new client concierge. So So
Okay.
as of right now, it's me sending the voice memos. But what's really brilliant, as you know, when you have someone new in your team, she has a fresh set of eyes. So
Yeah.
I don't want to exactly implement it yet. I need her to see all the things and then give me the feedback and then
Gotcha.
do that.
At what point does this become not scalable?
That's a good question.
Do you even worry about that?
No, I don't.
I'd love to know why. And I'm asking this because also selfish question, but also a lot of like our accelerator members, for example, who have coaching programs are looking to scale, but a big reason that they align with myself and the program and the in our business is because of, values based, and they want to continue to have as much personal connection as possible. We know that can only scale so much, right? One thing that people love when they apply for Accelerator, for example, is they love the fact that it's not this huge, massive group. It's a very manageable group for them where they get, they get a ton of one-on-one attention, both for myself and our coaches. And I'm very accessible. And that's all very intentional. I want it that way. Could it be much bigger? 100%. But we are doing this intentionally so that we can keep that, that level of intimacy and the connection, if you will, without losing it through a much bigger program. Just love to hear your thoughts on how you're thinking through. Is there even something that you're planning for when you don't want to lose that level of connection that you currently have?
Yeah, I am the same way as you, Rick. I think we live in that integrity where I unfortunately in the past have signed up for masterminds before, and then you don't get the person that you signed up for. They were just the figurehead for the sales process, but then you get someone else and you go there for them. So, and I'll be honest, I'm similar to you, Rick. I enjoy coaching. Shockingly, there's a lot of coaches that don't enjoy it. They just have the title and then whatever it is. But for me, what I've done is I've hired actually clients that have been in my program. And actually, they don't replace me, but they actually help provide other things that my clients do need. So for example, one of my clients does marketing and messaging. They went through my mastermind program and I was like, why don't you just come in and do marketing messaging once a month? And so that's been really great. And what we've been doing this past year is I've been on the calls with Monica. Monica Schrock is their name. And eventually I'm going to have my client concierge be part of those calls. They're just getting used to Monica. So then I eventually kind of fade away and it is Monica. But what I love, Rick, is Monica will literally say the same. Well, I love and hate it at the same time. Monica will literally say the same thing and say, well, Monica said this. And oh my gosh, that was so life-changing. And I tell my clients, I literally said that to you a week ago. So Monica comes in as a cool aunt. But it's not exactly... it's marketing messaging, which has to do with business, but that is their niche. And then I have another client who's been through my mastermind program who does mindset coaching. And so and I was on vacation for a full week. She got to take care of my clients. Everyone was happy. And so what's really great is I just get messages from my clients. I really love Monica. I really love Nicole. And that's great. And hey, by the way, sometimes my clients want to work with them like one-off, like on their own thing. And that's fine too. I believe in an abundance mindset. So I'm still there, but I have these aunties. That's what I call them. And they just love them. And I just joke around. I know how much you guys love Monica and Nicole more than me. And it's just such a great compliment to what I provide.
I was just going to say, and that's complete testament to what you've created, because otherwise they wouldn't be exposed to the brilliance of these people that you have brought in, that you've cultivated, that you've already helped, especially when they've already been through your program. So they know it's that much more relatable, right? For your current members to somebody who's already been through it and then helping them with their expertise.
Yeah. They're seen like role models and superheroes, which is great. Like I could be them. And also what I noticed with the two people who, my two coaches, we're each other's great referral partners. So if I meet someone they're not ready for me, I'll refer them to Nicole, who's a mindset coach.
Yep.
If I meet someone that wants more marketing and messaging and not so much business, I'll refer them to Monica. So it's just a win-win situation for everybody.
So prior to realigning your offers over this year, were you doing anything, quote unquote, lower ticket?
I did have a lower ticket product that I tested.
Okay.
It's actually, that's why I trademarked it. It was my high organic touch events and sales training. So it's a training on how to do online and in-person events, because that's what I'm known for, as well as I believe it's like 52 pages of sales scripts. So
wow.
I had that in the beginning of the year, and I'll be really transparent. I didn't put as much energy as I would. I sold about 7 of them. And then when I went through it, I'll just be honest, I just kind of analyzed it. Do I really like my energy being spent here? No.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy doing my high organic touch stuff. Now, that doesn't mean it was a complete fail. What I do with that, I still have it. So if someone's not a good fit, I'll refer that product to them. 1, and then 2, anyone that joins me in my higher level programs, that's just a bonus for them, which is the foundation of what I do anyways. So it wasn't a waste of time. It's still something that I use for all of my clients.
And I was asking that with the thought of, do you still approach that quote unquote lower ticket product with the same principles, the same intention as far as connection and sales and that sort of thing?
I do, but I mean, because it is low, it's what I mean by low, it's $497. It's not like I'm going to go through a sales call with them, right? So for example, if someone applies to work with me and I notice they're not at a level ready to be part of my mastermind or inner circle, I'll just send them a message like, hey, I know you're at this level. I'm so excited for you to want to work with me, but I do want to respect your time and mine. You're not quite ready. And this course may be actually a better fit for you. So I'm still doing the listening part. And what's really important for me is being in integrity to what's best for a client, even if I am not their person.
I love that, because you actually care about them. And this sounds kind of weird, but that is kind of unique in the online space, unfortunately, right? But it's one thing like this, everything we're talking about here is one huge thing that allows us to separate ourselves from all the noise, if you will, and everybody else doing, all the other online coaches. Now, you're very specific in who you help and how you help people. And we were just talking before we hit record about you want to start a podcast, and, talking about being very clear on your niche and really being niche down. Everything we're talking about here today is a huge differentiator in your and I know you're not doing it for positioning, but that is a result of the types of things that you're doing because of the fact that so many people don't do this.
I mean, I was a fundraiser, like you've mentioned before, Rick, and I remember, I'm getting into the nonprofit world, by the way, and getting really touchy during this giving season when this is being recorded in December. I remember I was at a scholarship event and one of my board members was with a college student. I worked at Passing City College as a fundraiser, and the student got a $500 scholarship. And I know $500 doesn't sound like much, but for a community college kid and for anyone that's been in college, that's a big deal. Do you know how many books you could buy with $500?
It's a lot of bucks.
It's a lot of bucks. But he just went to him and just said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that board member never forgot that story. That board member donates $20,000 a year. Like, it is that personal type of connection. And sure, that might be like in person, but I also want to remind you, like, for those of you that date, which I'm going to assume is every human being, whether you're married, single, whatever it is, wouldn't you want to be on a date with someone that remembers something about the last one. Like, oh, I remember you said you like sunflowers. So here it is. Or I'm going to deliver that to you the next day. It's those small little touches.
Because of what you said before, listening, regardless of who it is in our life and in our business, in the context we're talking about here, listening to our members, listening to our students, what I love it. Like they're telling you how to rewrite and how like the words to use. Like that's brilliant. I'm actually going to go talk to some of our accelerators and get that too. Like using that information to better attract the people that we really want to be attracting for our programs. And that is a form of, what we're talking about here, high organic touch, in a sense of we're simply listening. And then we are showing that we're listening by using that information in all of our marketing, so that when somebody's reading our marketing or watching it, whatever it is that we're listening, whatever it is that we're doing, they're like, oh yeah, that is me. That person gets me. And again, which is the connection part or the beginning of the connection part.
Yeah. Like, for example, I have sales calls this week, and it was someone who actually works in the nonprofit field and has her own business as well. Just having a bit of imposter syndrome. And I mean, that's what she mentioned in the application. And then obviously stalked her and found her. And I just told her, oh my gosh, I actually have similar background as you. I also do events. I'm so excited to connect. And she didn't even realize that. I mean, you could research that, right? But she's like, wow, I didn't know you came from the nonprofit world. It makes me more excited to work with you. But as simple as that you took the time to really get to know somebody. And I kind of compare it to people. Or not people, but even to Ivy Leagues, right? People spend a lot of money to go to Harvard for that professor to work with. And it's a small student-teacher ratio. And I'm not trying to, I want to be an Ivy League, essentially. And I want clients to know that when people come to work with me, or if anybody knows that they are working with Elaine and her team, that they get the best support.
Yeah. Which again is quite hard to find in this, in today in the online space. Like same thing. It's actually happens quite a bit. We had somebody apply for accelerator at the time of recording this just the other day. And they said that they had signed up for somebody else's mastermind, and it was a quote well-known person, and they paid a lot of money for it and were completely disappointed because what was sold was actually quite different than what was actually delivered. Mm-hmm. And just keeping this approach of what we're talking about here completely sets us apart from, other coaches, other people doing these types of programs. So if you were to sum it up in a few actionable bullet points for people to increase that, we'll keep calling it the organic touch, to increase that level of connection, whether it's with our existing, students or members, or people who are not yet students, how would you sum that up?
Okay, so one, take your ego out. Take your ego out. And then second, listen. Listen to how you could better serve your clients. And third is remind yourself, why are you doing this in the first place? Why did you come into this universe, the world, whatever higher power you believe in, God, the universe, Beyonce, maybe it's all three. But for me, it's all three. But what I mean by that is, the reason why I do it. So I'm a first generation immigrant. And I learned this because my grandmother passed away in March. Thankfully, not from COVID, but just being older. And she raised me like she was my third parent. But I didn't know this until she passed. She had her own business. She was doing hair.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was doing hair. Oh. But I didn't know that when forever in my life, I'm in my 30s now. I didn't know that until she passed. But the reason why she couldn't continue doing that was because when my mom was 16, my grandma's husband passed away from being in the army. And so she had 5 kids to raise. And so I remember my why because what a privilege it is for me to have this life of choice, right? To be able to do this podcast interview with you.
Yeah.
And to just be able to support others. Like that is my why. I know it's because all of my ancestors and generations before me sacrificed so much so I could have this life. I'm not saying your story has to be similar, but why are you doing this in the first place? Because it's so easy, unfortunately. I get caught up too in the, wait, hold on, how many likes, how many comments? And I know, Rick, you and I talk about numbers, and sure, you could look at those numbers, but you could also look at your numbers of what is your client retention? Or maybe you don't have a program that's not meant to retain people, right? Maybe it's meant to be 3 months, 6 months, or a year, whatever it is. Then what's the referral rate?
Yeah.
I mean, these are good questions to ask. Or how do you get your clients?
And being able to track that and do more of that.
Yeah.
Which is what we talk about all the time here on the show. What about research? Would you add research, or is that more of a listening thing for you?
Yeah, I would say that's part of it. It's the listening.
Yeah.
So something I didn't share here too, I used to do research in my undergrad. I also got my master's in leadership and management. So I had a thesis, but a lot of my research was doing the qualitative research, right? So asking these questions and the follow-up questions. So research and listening are both important. I mean, I know we were kind of talking about the likes and comments, but what's even interesting is I know you just, at the time of this recording, you just recently released a podcast with you and your wife, right? And I joke around with my own boyfriend. I'm like, I get so many likes when there's a picture of you and me. I don't get it. But I tell him we need to take more pictures together, but he is not as extroverted as me. He's like, no, I remember I'm a rare commodity. We can't show myself in your social media as much.
Well, that brings up a good point, though, actually. I think we've talked about this before. I personally have a hard time. I have this huge block around sharing on social. I'm working on it, but one thing that makes it more challenging, from a connection standpoint, et cetera, like exactly what we're talking about is, something that my wife and I have decided to do very intentionally is not share pictures of my daughter, Maya, on social, which makes it even hard. And because Amy, my wife, shared pictures early on in her life on her Facebook page, on her business page or what have you. And somebody took it and was posting it. And so it freaked us out. And that's made that decision that much easier. So anyway, but that makes it harder for me because she is my, she's why I do everything. And that's my number one value is family. But yet I have a hard time sharing that because of everything we're talking about. And so I just find it more challenging to open that side up of me, which is, again, number one value. Also a big reason why people come join Accelerator, for example, is for that reason. We have a lot of parents and growing a business and having kids, et cetera. But anyway, when you brought that up about your boyfriend, that brings it up. It just makes it harder for me personally, and I haven't quite figured that out. To be honest with you.
I mean, I don't post about him as much, and I know me and him have talked about when we want kids, I wouldn't want to post either as well in the future. And one of the reasons why I do want to, as you and I were talking about in the beginning, want to start a podcast more as opposed to on social media, it is a cancel culture. And I mean, we live in a cancel culture. We've seen it since the pandemic started. You could say the completely wrong thing, both intentionally and not intentionally, and get attacked.
Yeah.
And I've just accepted the fact that there's things I don't want to share publicly. There's my no list.
Yeah.
But it's okay for me to talk about it. And I think having those boundaries, and one of the things I am grateful for from the pandemic is learning the importance of mental health and boundaries, is to be okay to not share everything.
Yeah. Again, topics that not a lot of people are willing to talk about.
And I want to share this because I was a bit frustrated this past year. I have noticed, it's interesting. My clients have shared with me, I know I need to be vulnerable and share my most vulnerable story. I'm like, what if you don't need to? Just because so-and-so is sharing the trauma that they have been through, that is fine. They could do it, but that doesn't mean you have to. And it doesn't mean that you have to in order to get clients.
Yeah.
There's just been this trend that people should share. And I also want to remind, I am also not a licensed therapist, but I do believe in therapy. I have gone through therapy. And if you're going to go through therapy, I do recommend EMDR. I love EMDR therapy. But people go through trauma and life situations differently, and respect how you do life. And if you do not want to share it, do not share it and honor it. Don't just do it just because everyone's doing it.
And I struggle with that too, personally. And I'm not talking like years ago, like even today. My Instagram, for example, hasn't grown. I've been at the same follower range for a long time, right? And so there's more to it for, like I'm talking about here, just being open and transparent about this. But our accelerator applicants and our members don't come from Instagram for the most part. People DM me and stuff like that. I don't mean that, because people DM me and ask me questions and we connect, et cetera, et cetera. It's more so this podcast, because talking about connection, like right now I'm wearing my AirPods and you mentioned like you listen to this show when you're at the gym, when you're washing dishes or what have you. Like, we're connecting on that level. You're getting to know my personality, even though I think I can be even more open with my personality here in the show, because I'm just a goof. But anyway, like just looking at different ways in what aligns with you in how you want to deliver value and to connect with your audience in whatever way, suits your audience, but suits you and what lights you up in the way that you deliver it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was a huge realization I had even these past 2 months. And Rick, you and I were talking a bit, like I have been doing more long form content, emails, blogs, because I own that content. And if anyone's mad at me and doesn't like the content, they could just hit reply to my email and say whatever bad, nasty words, or just unsubscribe to me. And podcast, I get to just speak freely and it's not scripted. And I think that's what hasn't turned me on so much from social media as much lately, is it just feels so scripted. It's like a high school yearbook. And let's say you are into that. I'm not saying the negativity, but you do enjoy creating content because you love creating the reels and TikTok. Like, that's great. Like, if that's what you love and that sets you on fire, you go do it. But I hope what people are hearing from both me and Rick is like, where do you actually enjoy producing your content and communicating with your audience that lights you up? And so I've just owned, this is what I want to do in my corner. And I don't have to do all the things. I mean, this is how Olympic athletes become Olympic athletes. They're focused on that. I always give the Michael Jordan comparison. Like, Michael Jordan was known for basketball, and then he tried baseball, wasn't as great on it, then went back to basketball. He didn't win any gold medals or championships with baseball, but he did with basketball because he just really understood his talent and skill set.
Yeah. And you say you owning your quote unquote little part of the internet, you have a flow coming into your business of your exact people that you want to be working with. And that's a good thing, right? Because you're doing all the things that we're talking about here today.
Yeah. I mean, getting that first 6 figures is so hard because you're throwing spaghetti on the wall and figuring things out. But then when you just become better at it, like really become that CEO.
Yep.
And yes, I believe in the feminine of like the woo, like really journaling, reflecting, but also really being the CEO of looking at your numbers, seeing what's working, kind of the machine of it, like combining the two. It's just perfect because every week I get 2 leads coming in and they're so ideal. And it's just been happening these past 2 months, but I've just set it up in the past 4 years. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I love it. Where can people connect with you? Instagram? I'm just kidding.
You could go to Instagram.
You can go to Instagram. Yes.
Yeah.
What are the best places?
You could go to Instagram I'm at Elaine Lou, ELAINELOU _ And hey, I have a little homework assignment. If you want to see how my high organic touch works, DM me and say that you listened to both me and Rick connecting, and you'll see how I just connect with others. And I'm also online at elainelou.com.
So I want to prepare you because my listening audience here, they come strong. I've had people on this show who have been on a lot of podcasts. And I've had several of them say, "Whoa, I have never received such nicer outreach from people than listen to your show." So bring it, my friends.
Yeah.
Connect with Elaine on Instagram, DM her.
Rick, I just want to compliment you. Like I said earlier, I mean, I've listened to your podcast, and not just because I have an interview. I mean, I could have easily just listened to one, but then I just got hooked and just listened. So you're just real and authentic. You're sharing how it is.
Well, thank you.
Not the sexy stuff. I mean, yes, the sexy stuff, but like also the not so sexy stuff.
Right. Well, I think there's, I really, really appreciate you saying that. And I feel like, when people are only hearing the awesome stuff, I call it like the iceberg effect. Like people are only seeing what's above the water. They're not seeing all the crap that's going on below the water. I like talking about, in addition to the good stuff and how to, all the amazingness that's possible, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that a lot of people aren't talking about that's actually real, that is very, very important, I think, to be talking about. And when people are only seeing one side, it's a disservice. So thank you for saying that. So at Elaine Lou, you said _.
Yeah,
right?
There's an underscore. So it's ELAINELOU and then an underscore after that.
Awesome. And I'll link everything up in the show notes for today's episode, my friends. Thank you, Elaine, for joining us. Super appreciate it. And really enjoy this conversation. Whenever we talk, I'm like learning so much from you, and I've been taking a whole bunch of notes on my end. So thank you for bringing your brilliance and sharing with our audience here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
Hey, my friend, thank you as always for listening today. Do me a favor and reach out to Elaine on Instagram. Shoot her a DM. Again, I'll link everything up in the show notes for today's episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on Apple Podcast, or Stitcher. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss any episodes here on the podcast. And also, if you haven't yet, I'd be super grateful if you leave a quick rating and review for the show over on Apple Podcasts. That's a huge help still in this day and age here of podcasting. So thank you so much, my friend. Until next time, be well, and I'll talk to you soon.